The latest Emerson College poll I saw out this week shows you with the support of about 25% of likely voters in New York. I wonder what your plan is, Curtis, to make up the lost ground. What's your action plan for the next 5 days?
Well, first off, that's the first poll that's been done, and it's the same polling operation that had me ahead of Fernando Mathieu in the Republican primary by only 6 percentage points. I ended up beating him by 40%. So I think the truth may be somewhere far in between and not to that extent. My secret has been, as a Republican and an independent candidate, to go into neighborhoods where the only Republican they've ever seen is Abraham Lincoln on a $5 bill. These are areas predominantly Democrat, but where I have been received well because I've been there as leader of the Guardian Angels for the past 42 years, tending to the needs of the poor, the disenfranchised, the emotionally disturbed, the homeless. So that's one plus. Having the independent party line is another big plus. It helped Michael Bloomberg become mayor of the city of New York because with Republican votes alone, you just can't do it. And a lot of moderate Democrats and independents, of which I used to be an independent.
That same poll, Curtis, shows crime to be the #1 issue for the majority of New York voters. And that's not a huge surprise. I'm sure for you, it's been a centerpiece of your campaign. I'd like to ask you a couple of quick questions about that. If you wake up next Wednesday as the next mayor of New York, what will be your policy on police officers' use of chokeholds?
Number one, I myself have never used a chokehold. We train the Guardian Angels not to use chokeholds. A chokehold should only be used when your life or other lives are threatened. There are many other procedures that you can use as an accomplished martial artist that can be taught to the police officers so they'd have more options than just a chokehold.
So you would ban that in case it was in the act of self-defense?
No, it depends on the situation. You have to look at each and every situation. Now that we have video cams, which is great, both on the dashboard of the police cars responding and on the police officers themselves, as we saw in the case of Eric Garner, we were able to see it because a citizen had videoed it. You could come to your conclusion. Pantaleo should never have put that chokehold on Eric Garner, because it was unnecessary. His life was not threatened. Other police officers and citizens were not threatened. So there are other remedies to that in terms of holding a suspect without having to use a chokehold.
On a related point, what would then also be your policy on qualified immunity for police officers, Curtis?
Well, isn't it ironic that Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, is protected by qualified immunity? And we're going to have to pay all the legal expenses, plus if it goes to civil court, all the payouts in terms of his indiscretions. But police officers are being stripped of qualified immunity right across New York State. And the person who led that was Andrew Cuomo. And my opponent, Eric Adams, has wanted to strip qualified immunity from police officers. I say when elected officials do as I say and do as I do and strip qualified immunity from themselves, then I think we can look at stripping qualified immunity from the police. But why only the police? Why not judges, district attorneys who sometimes have unfairly incarcerated men and women for many, many years? They're protected by qualified immunity.
They're also not authorized to use lethal force, though.
Oh, and putting you in jail for 25 years and 30 years for a crime you didn't commit? You don't think that's worse than having a forceful maneuver used on you, a chokehold? At least you're alive and out of jail. So you think 25 to 30 years unfairly given to a suspect by a judge, a DA, and prosecutors, that merits being protected by qualified immunity?
It's not what I think. I want to know what your policy would be.
Oh, you know doggone well. If you're going to strip qualified immunity from police, you're going to strip it from judges and prosecutors and others who are investigators on behalf of the district attorney's office. They're always protected because the political class is always protected. Look at Andrew Cuomo. He doesn't have to pay a penny for all of his violations against his own staff and females who work for him.
Curtis, you've said a lot about vaccine mandates recently. If you become the next mayor, will you drop the requirement for police and firefighters to be vaccinated for COVID?
Look, we had the perfect common sense approach. If you couldn't be vaccinated, wouldn't be vaccinated, thought that antibodies meant you didn't have to be vaccinated, test them once a week. They were doing that. But the mayor, on his way out, like Michael Corleone, is trying to settle all scores. As a result, we will not have police, fire department, sanitation personnel. I'm joining them today outside of Gracie Mansion because this is an outrage. Where is the humanity? We're going to fire these men and women, essential workers, heroes, when in the midst of the lockdown and pandemic, they risked their lives, they gave their lives. Now we're going to fire them, furlough them. That means they can't get another job and they won't be able to get unemployment. How does that make sense? So when I'm elected mayor,
schools? How about for schools once the vaccine is approved for young children?
Right. We roll back the mandates and we get the workers back and we give them back pay. For children, I have 3 children in the public school system. I want them vaccinated, but we're not going to kick kids out of school because for various reasons, parents don't want them vaccinated. You sit down, you get the parents involved, you try to convince them that the children should be vaccinated. We just got them back into the public school rooms after a year and a half of them playing Fortnite and Roblox, and now we want to kick kids out of school. I say no to that.
It's been said that being the mayor of a major city is like herding cats, Curtis. We've heard a lot about cats. Why do you share a small Manhattan apartment with 16 cats?
Because I'm the only candidate ever to campaign on the issue of no-kill shelters for dogs, cats, and other animals. My wife actually rescues cats that are scheduled to be destroyed and euthanized. If they're surrendered into a shelter or they're found in the streets, they only have 72 hours to be claimed or fostered out or adopted or rescued by a rescue group. If not, they're euthanized, they're destroyed. That's never going to happen again when I'm mayor. We are never again going to kill cats or dogs or animals. Gandhi said, a society that does not take care of its animals will not take care of its people. And guess what? Look at how we treat emotionally disturbed persons and homeless. So it makes the point, let's treat our animals and our human beings in a manner that they should be treated.